finding a way to make Alzheimer's preventable and treatable in our lifetime. And that's what we're all working on.
Welcome to Startup Health TV, where we celebrate the entrepreneurs and the innovators who are transforming health. I'm Logan Plaster. Here we are at the AAIC convention in Philadelphia with Dhivya Venkat from Esya Labs, CEO and co-founder. Good to see you, Dhivya.
Lovely to see you, Logan.
You're one of the recent additions to the Alzheimer's Moonshot at Startup Health. It's been lovely to get to know your journey at Esya, and I was fascinated by your transition point between being in consulting and then getting into brain health. Could you tell us that personal story?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of companies are created in boardrooms. Mine was created in a hospital bed.
Okay.
So I did a quadrathlon in Norway, so four marathons in 4 days.
Quadrathlon.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a thing, but go on.
In Norway.
Okay.
And I then had to go to India for a few days, and when I flew back, I had meningitis, and we think it's meningitis, but we still don't quite know what it was. And they thought I was having a stroke. I was in intensive care for a couple of weeks. And that's when I realized how difficult it was to diagnose anything to do with the brain. They did lumbar punctures, they did MRIs, but the diagnosis part was very difficult. So after I got better, which kind of took me a year, I had paralysis, I got better. That's when I sort of was talking to a co-founder, my current co-founder, and she was telling me about this incredible technology that she created that allows you to look at a particular pathway that's dysfunctional in neurodegeneration. I thought, well, we need to change status quo. We need to change the way we monitor the health of our brain, and that's how Esya was born.
I'm fascinated by your story because you didn't come at it as a neuroscientist, you came at it as a problem solver.
Yeah.
How much of that came from your time as a consultant, and kind of how do you feel like your approach to this problem is maybe unique to someone who is coming at it purely from a research standpoint?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because when I look around at our competitors and people who are doing what we're doing, they're very focused on a particular hypothesis or their IP, whereas I don't come at it just from our technology.
Like
I come
my
at
PhD, this is what I worked on, and I want it to work
Exactly.
in the world.
Exactly. Whereas I come at it from the end customer, because that's who I am, the end customer. What is the problem that we're looking at fixing, and how can we not just use what we have that's ours, but combine it with other technologies to actually change how we manage and monitor the health of our brain.
Okay.
And cognitive longevity is so important, I think.
So more of a panel approach, more of a platform approach?
Exactly.
How much of a curator of technology are you going to try to be?
Yeah. I think we start with the problem. So today the biggest issue is we monitor the health of our heart, our kidney, our liver, but we don't monitor the health of our brain at all until you have a disease, right? Whereas with a lot of, like Oscar Hansen said, you know, there are many people that have the pathology for Alzheimer's, but they may not go on to develop it.
Yeah.
And with brain health, if you can monitor key indicators that tell you that your brain is not aging well, not just amyloid for Alzheimer's and tau and p-tau 217, but neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration markers, and you can then have an option to go, I'm not aging well, there are issues where I've got things, the markers that are slightly upregulated. How can I stage lifestyle interventions, things such as your diet, your cardiovascular health, your
social
sleep,
connectiveness.
Exactly, that might halt the disease, but it might even prolong the onset of the disease. That gives you a better outcome because you have information that you can action, and that's what we want to do at Esya.
So part of the story you're telling me is this curating the best brain health into like a panel. But I also know from your website that I read this Nobel laureate described Esya as having this, I'm going to miss the quote, but game-changing technology.
Yeah.
So there's actually like a core technology for Esya. So what is that?
Yes. So we profile a pathway, which is the endolysosomal pathway.
Okay.
And it's part of the key autophagy process in our body.
I'm going to nod like I understand these words. Help me understand.
And it's a pathway that is impaired in a lot of neurodegenerative diseases.
Okay.
And it's very important to understand the pathology of a disease, understand what happens to cause a disease. So it's much more preventative. What can you monitor in terms of cellular dysfunction
Okay.
that allows you to then correct that cellular dysfunction before it becomes a disease. So our technology looks at that particular pathway that we know is dysfunctional, a lot of these diseases, and we look at ways that we can correct it through therapeutic intervention. So we've got two sides to Esya. The one is the screening aspects, the screening for brain health, but we also work with pharmaceutical companies to help them find druggable targets to correct that particular pathway that we own the patents on.
So obviously, it's likely you will work with pharmaceutical companies. Like that's one way into the market, but you obviously want to impact patients because you were a patient.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that gap and make sure that your technology doesn't get stuck at the big pharma level, but really impacts people's lives?
Yeah.
How do you think through that challenge?
So I think the first thing is the ability to monitor the health of our brain.
Okay.
And secondly, so little is understood about, let's take Alzheimer's, so little is understood about this disease, the pathology of this disease. And to understand that, you need data. So through our diagnostics, through our screening tests, we aggregate data that allows us to find patterns using AI to understand what are all of the different pathways that we could treat if they are becoming dysfunctional for this particular disease indicators. And that's how we work with pharma to then understand what drugs are available on the market, who would respond to what drug. So how do you personalize therapeutic interventions, and how do you discover new treatments so you prevent the disease and not just look at curing it?
Something I'm interested in about Esya is that you seem to be cultivating a nimble company because it's a changing field. It's not just one person's IP, like you said. As the CEO, and given your background in consulting and business, how do you cultivate a nimble team, even though you're working with hardcore scientists?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I think for all of us, it's the cause. It's actually finding a way to make Alzheimer's preventable and treatable in our lifetime. And that's what we're all working on. So our scientists are very good at collaborating with other institutions, with other universities. And the focus from our perspective is because we're very honest about limitations. We're very honest about what works and what doesn't work. And if something doesn't work, the question is, how do you fix it? What can we do to find a solution? So that communication and transparency is very important. And that's what we cultivate at Esya.
Very nice. Last question. You're a part of this Health Moonshot community. Over the last few months, have you had any particular experiences where the kind of the power of collaboration and community has sort of come to life for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great working with other people in this space because I think like the entire ethos of Esya is one company isn't going to solve this problem. So by being a part of something like Startup Health, we work with other companies that we're hoping we're going to be forging relationships with in the future. And together, by sharing data, by sharing our knowledge, let's make Alzheimer's preventable and curable in our lifetime, right?
I love it. Dhivya, thanks for taking a minute with me. It's exciting to watch Esya grow and develop. You're still relatively young as a company, and yet I think the next couple of years are going to be very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Logan.
So,
it's been such a pleasure.
All right, take care.